Hey, everybody, it's Devin.
And Kate.
Welcome to Summer Medcrimes. Summer is here. School's out for the summer. It would not be the start of a podcast if I did not
Sing
serenade
a
all of
song.
you.
Yeah. I think that's just kind of built into our lives now. A little
That is,
serenade.
but I will also say that that's not what the people care about. How about, Kate, you give a quick, brief, high-level update on your baby girl?
Yeah.
That's what people want to know about.
I do so appreciate everybody who reached out and expressed their support for us. That was a really, really tough time for everybody. It was super emotional, but kids in general and my daughter are just like absolute freaking heroes. It's wild what they can endure. And like I think that if I had been through the surgery that she just endured, I would still be in bed.
If you think about it, and I said this to you, we get residents in long-term care that have had
Mhm.
spinal fusion for,
Yes.
this, and they come for rehab, and,
Yeah.
Cecilia's just rocking it.
The surgery could not have gone better. Her team has been so pleased with her progress, and we stayed up on the 10th floor in Boston Children's. And I know there were some employees actually that reached out to me via Instagram and sent little messages. And so that was really cool.
So
So
sweet.
I
Oh,
know
that's
that was so
cute.
neat. So
Oh, wow. How special. I'm
I
surprised they didn't want to
know
hunt you down.
I would have hunted them down if I had known exactly where they were at.
That's so
But
sweet.
any and all of you who work in pediatrics, you're just, such magical creatures, and what you do is just so incredible. And the care that we received at Boston Children's was just so unbelievably wonderful. Every facet of it, every person we encountered was kind and lovely and wonderful and so knowledgeable. And Cece is up and walking around and vibing. And she wanted so bad to come down here and listen in on the podcast today. But I had to convince her that she would not quite be comfortable in these chairs just yet. So maybe next time.
Yes.
But she is an absolute rock star. So thank you all so much for your support and understanding that this episode was a day late. And that we're not in the best place yesterday to record. So now we're hitting it. It's a better day today.
And we also, we thought we were going to stack the episodes together, and then, just life because of everything that's going on. It's not every day that your child has a major surgery that you need to put all of your eggs into that basket. So,
Yes, 100%.
That's what we do. Our fans understand. They know what we put into everything for this show. So
because
our
they're
true fans
literally the
know.
best. So, it is what it is. And I am actually really excited to just kind of get back into this and finish off this crazy story about the death of Michael Jackson and Dr. Conrad Murray and everything that transpired, because we're going to get sort of into the nitty gritty, the more technical stuff, the details of the medical examiner findings and all of that really interesting stuff.
Can I just say, I have been inundated with Michael Jackson stuff
Me too.
since we recorded 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
The Netflix documentary is out. I don't know if you saw that. I think it's called Verdict or something.
Yep.
But then also my mother's like, hey, you got to see that movie Jackson that's in the theater. And I was like, what is with all this Jackson talk?
I know.
Or the Michael movie. Yeah, I'm just like, what?
I know. Yep, it is out there now, and that's why I thought, this is really a great time to do this. And again, thank you, Nurse Allie, who you can find at nurse_Allie on TikTok and Instagram, and she's fabulous, and we love her so much for this suggestion.
Duh.
Yes. A duh. So let's get back into it. So when we left off, we had sort of talked about Michael's upbringing, how he and Dr. Murray sort of came to know each other before the two had a professional relationship, and how Dr. Murray was sort of hired on by Michael's management company to be his private physician during his huge tour that was going to start over in Europe, and the UK, I believe. And the plan was for him to sort of follow Michael on this tour and provide him with any medical care he would need. And he would be getting paid $150,000 a month for this deal. So this would have been incredibly lucrative for him. So,
I mean, why not at that rate?
I mean, I think anybody would have said, okay, I'll travel the world with you, Michael
I probably
Jackson,
wouldn't
and
have
take care
killed
of
him,
you.
but I'm just saying.
I would maybe have not taken that step. So, yeah, I mean, things went awry one night when Jackson was battling some very intense insomnia that was very resistant to treatment, which had long been an issue for him. And after failing some oral medications, he ended up giving him many doses of IV benzos, which also failed somehow. And this culminated in him receiving a dose of propofol IV around 10 o'clock the following morning to try and get him to sleep. And Dr. Murray then left the room, came back, and found him unresponsive. And unfortunately, he had passed away. And we talked intensely about propofol and why it is not used in the home setting and why it is, it is used as a component of general anesthesia and not as a like casual sleep aid. So lot of things to unpack here and a lot that went wrong, a lot of really terrible judgment calls, which we're going to get into.
I
So,
want to know.
me too. So, following Michael's death, of course, it made headlines all over. I mean, this was so shocking for everybody because he, was really in the prime of his life. Eventually, he was getting older. He was in his 40s, but he was still touring. He was still successful. He was still turning out album after album and still making all this music. And all of a sudden, he was just dead. And
Uh-huh.
this was, so shocking for not only everybody in the world, but of course his family was completely devastated to have lost him at such a
And
young
his
age.
children were so young.
They were so young. They were so young. So this was really sad for everybody in his community. Now, on February 8th of 2010 is when Murray was finally formally charged with involuntary manslaughter in Jackson's death. And he entered a plea of not guilty, and he was released on a $75,000 bail. And at that stage, the judge actually let him remain free, but restricted his medical practice. So he was given a ban on administering any anesthetic agents, like especially anything to do with like general anesthesia. He could not administer any IV sedation whatsoever. And then
Smart choice.
yeah. And then that sort of evolved from there because in the months after those charges were filed, the medical board actually ended up pushing for tighter limits on his practice. And a court order was issued at the arraignment, which, like I said, had barred him from using any heavy sedatives. But eventually in January of 2011, California suspended his right to practice medicine altogether. And then in that same period, he had multiple state licenses because remember, he was also practicing in Arizona at one point. He had California, he had Nevada, he had that practice in Las Vegas. So there were multiple state licenses that were looking at his licensure and like whether or not they should suspend. And over a period of about a year, one by one, all of these states ended up suspending his medical license so that he could not just go to another state and start
I was going to say,
practicing.
did he do that before any of
Yes.
them deemed it? Like,
Yeah. So he didn't. No, he wasn't like really trying to pray. He was really trying to
Okay.
stay out of like the limelight, which I thought was wise.
I mean, yeah,
And
because you're already in it. I mean, it's Michael
exactly.
Jackson.
You don't want to, and like, what patient is going to want to come see you? Honestly, after for all of that, like, it's not funny, but it's like I wouldn't really want to come see you in the clinic if you had just murdered a guy. Kind of. I'm not really into that. So that's where I'm at with that. So then on the preliminary hearing begins January 4th of 2011, and this is in Los Angeles. And prosecutors argued that Murray hid drugs, failed to tell paramedics that he had given Jackson propofol initially, and that he did not perform CPR properly. So a lot of allegations in addition to the simple fact that he elected to give him propofol. I mean, there was a
Wow.
lot of layers here. Judge Michael Pastor found there was enough evidence to send Murray to trial for involuntary manslaughter during this preliminary hearing. And on January 25th of 2011, he formally entered a not guilty plea in court saying, quote, "I am an innocent man," end quote. I mean, innocent is a strong word. I think
Until proven guilty. I'll go with that one.
Sure. I just feel like, your judgment's in question here, sir, like big time. So, I mean, that's sort of how all of this began. Now, the prosecution's medical experts started by saying propofol should never have been used in the home setting as a sleep aid, and that Murray's treatment plan was so dangerously outside the acceptable scope of practice that there's no other way to describe it other than using like negligent, and I mean it was homicide.
I
This is
want to
why it
know
was
his
homicide.
reasoning. Like, I want
Well,
to
I
know
know.
what he, used as a reason as to why he did that.
I think for him it was like, well, the benzos aren't working, the oral meds aren't working, the hypnotics aren't working. I don't have anything else I can give this man, so I guess I'm going to anesthetize him,
It's not
which is
smart.
not logical, but I can't imagine that that's not how he arrived at that. You know what I mean?
Correct.
One
Yeesh.
recurring theme during the entire trial was that Jackson really should have been treated with much safer medications and not with like dose after dose after dose of benzo and IV sedatives over and over again. Like this had been going on for a while. And the use of propofol eventually again was just such a disaster for so many reasons. Now, Dr. Stephen Schaefer, an anesthesiologist and a major expert witness for the prosecution, reportedly spent several days explaining how propofol works and why the way it was used in Jackson's bedroom was horribly unsafe. And his testimony supported the theory that Murray left Jackson on a propofol infusion or otherwise administered the drug in a way that led directly to his death. So either he gave him a bigger bolus than he's admitting to, or he was on an infusion and then he just left the room. Yep. Which, like, of all of the times to go to the bathroom and take a shit, of all of the times,
Yep.
maybe this was not the best time.
Maybe wait till the infusion is done.
I mean, or maybe just not give propofol at all to a man laying in his bedroom. Like, this
I'm
is
all for that.
outrageous.
I am all for that option.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Yes. Another expert, Dr. Christopher Rogers, who was the medical examiner on the case, testified that Jackson died from acute propofol intoxication with benzodiazepines as a contributing factor. And he reinforced the coroner's conclusion and tied all that medical evidence together into Murray's conduct leading up to the death. And that testimony mattered a lot because it linked all those drug findings to a fatal overdose scenario rather than like this vague medical collapse, which is sort of what the defense was going for.
Right.
Now, the defense brought in another anesthesiologist, Dr. Paul White, who argued that Jackson may have self-injected more propofol when Dr. Murray left the room briefly. His theory was that the fatal dose could have been administered by Jackson himself, which would lessen Murray's direct responsibility for the moment of death. But what White also ended up helping with the prosecution in some ways, honestly, because under cross-examination, he acknowledged that Murray repeatedly violated the standard of care and that propofol should never have been in the equation, ever.
Right.
So, the fact that it was even in the room with us is a problem.
He gave him the access to it, right.
Exactly. So, whether or not Jackson...
It's kind of like, I mean, any drug dealer, if there was someone that died by an overdose, you're the dealer,
that's
you gave him
baby.
the access, that's on you. Yeah.
That is on you.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. That's a really good analogy, actually. So, yes, the defense was sort of trying to paint this other narrative, but it ended up really more so aiding the prosecution at the end of the day. Now, an emergency room physician testified that Murray did not tell hospital staff that he had given Jackson propofol. He withheld that information completely. He mentioned that he gave him lorazepam. That was the only thing he said that he gave. He said, I only gave him lorazepam. And that omission really mattered because it suggested that Murray was not being forthcoming in the immediate moments leading up to and contributing to his death. And this was a very critical moment. Jackson was actively being resuscitated here. So that would have been very valuable information to know. And the testimony from the medical side also showed that when Jackson arrived, the efforts to resuscitate him were already underway, and the hospital treated the case as an emergency transfer from the mansion where Murray had tried CPR initially. And this helped the jury kind of understand that by the time Jackson reached the hospital, he was already in an extremely poor condition. Like he was on death's door as much as one can be. So the key themes for like what the jury heard were basically these expert testimonies were huge, right? There was a lot of talk regarding his drug levels too, like from like with the medical examiner's testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the key quantitative finding was that Jackson's blood contained 3.2 micrograms per milliliter of propofol. And according to a forensic anesthesiologist who reviewed all of the reports, that propofol level was similar to those found during general anesthesia for a major surgery. So he received a general anesthesia dose of propofol,
Oof.
which is like why that one little bolus of 25 milligrams, that's BS. I don't know what you
Yeah.
did, sir, but you did not just give that. He was either getting
Right.
an infusion or he got a much higher dose than that.
Oof.
You would see that in a patient undergoing major surgery who needs like massive amounts of anesthesia and would be on a ventilator because they are not breathing on their own. So for somebody not in a medical setting, that is considered lethal. 100% lethal. That is if
Well,
somebody
I
is
mean,
not being
yeah, the people that
ventilated,
are only
that's lethal.
surviving general anesthesia is when you're being monitored by an
Yes,
anesthesiologist,
and
you
on a
know? So,
ventilator. So that is a
right.
lethal amount of propofol that he received. Now, the toxicity report also identified, again, several benzodiazepines, which is important, again, because he only admitted to ever giving lorazepam. He never admitted to emergency responders that he gave a fuck ton more medications.
Right.
So they found lorazepam, which was cited as one of the primary drugs responsible for his death alongside the propofol. They also found that he had received the midazolam, which is Versed, which is often used again for preoperative sedation, but can be used for severe anxiety and insomnia in certain scenarios. They also found the Valium, the diazepam, was present in his system. They found the presence of lidocaine, which we knew that was in there because he had it's typically given alongside propofol because propofol can sting when it goes into your vein. So they will dilute it with a little bit of lidocaine. So that's not unusual. They also described Jackson's physical condition. He weighed 136 pounds and he was 5'9", which that's like
Mm,
all fairly acceptable weight range for his height.
mhm.
His heart was strong. He had no plaque buildup. He had no atherosclerotic disease of the heart or any of the major vessels. His kidneys and his major organs were all normal. His lungs showed some chronic inflammation and scarring, most likely because he had had pneumonia in the past. And as a child, he had pneumonia multiple times, which it would have been consistent with that finding. His face and neck had some scars because he had had some cosmetic procedures done. And
Mhm.
he also had tattooed eyebrows and tattooed blush on his lips, which all was well known prior to his death even. But according to an anesthesiology expert reviewing the report, his overall health was fine and
I
within
was
the
gonna say all
normal
of that
limits.
is nothing that's like,
Exactly. It's all
yep.
just going to support the idea that he was otherwise a healthy man, and he
Had it
really
not been
had
for that, he would have been alive.
exactly. It's not like this led to a heart attack that was already impending, or that this led to respiratory failure that was already an impending issue. None of that was on the table. He was otherwise in really good health and an actually excellent cardiovascular condition. The man frickin' danced all day, every day. He was probably way healthier than a lot of us, to be honest with you. Now back to the emergency room staff testimonies. So there were two UCLA emergency room physicians who testified that when Jackson arrived at the hospital, he was already in cardiac arrest, actively being resuscitated, and basically clinically dead when he rolled through the door.
Oof.
When they laid eyes on him, they believed that further resuscitation attempts from where he's at right now is likely futile. And they said Murray insisted that you try anyway. Keep trying. You have to keep trying.
He was probably panicking.
They said, "Please don't," he said, "Please don't give up. Don't give up so easily." That's exactly what this was. He was panicking because he knew that, I mean, this was going to fall back on him if Jackson died, and that's exactly what happened. And he even stepped in and attempted to bag him and ventilate him himself when the rest of the staff started to step away. So it was really just a very dramatic scene overall. Murray, again, did not tell them that he had received propofol. He only ever mentioned Ativan. The ER docs also tried to get more information out of Murray, like what time did he receive the Ativan? What time did you start CPR? What were the events leading up to this? And he could not provide them with a clear timeline of any kind. He said, like, I really don't know, like, I really can't keep track. And then once everybody kind of stepped away and the doctors started asking more questions, he kind of abruptly left, which was a little bit unusual.
It's like, I'm done with you.
Yep. And this confusion about timing kind of again reinforced the prosecution's narrative that Murray's care was super disorganized. He was not reliable by any means.
And I don't know what the requirements are with private home care, right? Private physicians and all that. But
Right.
I'm assuming he ain't writing anything down.
Well, that's the thing. Like, are you
Does he
doing
have
your
any
own record
record?
keeping?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
and is this just like a piece of paper you can like write things on, or is there anything like? I mean, this isn't that long ago. Like, is there anything electronic that you use? Like, I'd love to
Right.
know. Like, what are
Mhm.
the requirements? I would imagine that there's still some legal
As
oversight.
far as a medical record, needing to
Yeah,
have
I
that.
would
Yeah.
think so. Yeah. Now, Murray's assistant, Dr. Murray's assistant, he had an assistant that was working with him within Michael Jackson's house. His name was Alberto Alvarez. And he was called to testify on the events of that night and the morning. And he was present in the house on June 25th, and he helped Murray during that emergency. And he reported that Murray told him to call 911 and that he saw Murray performing CPR. And Alvarez's testimony actually helped establish the timeline of events because he was actually a lot more reliable and specific about the times of everything happening, which was helpful.
Mhm.
And it showed that Murray was physically present and directing like the whole emergency response. And he was actually really helpful in that whole scenario. Now, the defense went on to call 5 character witnesses on behalf of Dr. Murray. And they testified that he was a caring physician. He was never motivated by money. He was a dedicated doctor who took his patients seriously. And during all of this, I guess Murray reportedly was like in tears, hearing all of these people say nice things about him, which I guess, whatever. That's nice, I guess.
Whatevs.
Whatever, man. And these witnesses obviously were trying to sort of like turn the narrative a little bit and make it seem like, he really does care, really is a nice guy. He's not this heartless murderer. Now, the prosecution actually played some audio recordings of Michael Jackson speaking in the days before his death. And the recordings showed Jackson having some periods where his speech seemed a little bit slurred, and that he had mentioned taking a whole bunch of medications to try and sleep in the weeks leading up to his death. Now, these recordings help illustrate Jackson's state and the extent of his medication use, that it was like obviously making him somewhat impaired, but not actually letting the poor man sleep, which is so hard.
Mhm.
It can be so complicated sometimes when insomnia is really tough to treat, because that is it can be a major health issue if it goes on too long.
Which, quick tangent, by the way, for my moms out there that are starting to approach their 40s, I'm not going to admit that. By the way, what's with this 3:30 a.m. insomnia thing that starts to happen?
God, that's a drag.
I'm
That
not
happens
okay
to
with
me.
that.
So that just started for you, because that's been like since I've been alive.
Legit.
3:30.
Okay. It just started for me, I swear, since I
Okay,
turned
well,
39. I'm not okay.
Welcome. It sucks here. Welcome. We hate it. We hate it here.
This is new for me and I'm not okay. But
God,
anyway,
you poor man.
continue.
Yes. Now, Fahim Muhammad, who was Michael Jackson's chief of security, testified during the trial that, now this was on September 28th, 2011, that he testified. And his testimony was mostly focused on what happened immediately after Jackson's collapse. and the emotional impact on like the Jackson children, because he observed a lot of that. He had described his job as, quote, I was the chief of his security, so my responsibilities ranged from making sure his house was protected, his children were protected, and making sure his day-to-day activities were safe and planned and mapped out, end quote. And he was one of the first people on the scene when Jackson died, because he was in the house and he was there to help. So what he saw in the room was, when he arrived, Jackson was unresponsive and Conrad Murray was, quote, nervously attempting to revive him, end quote. He
Not
also,
confidently, but nervously.
yes, and this part is so sad. He describes that Paris Jackson was in the house at the time. And he stated that Paris was on the ground, quote, balled up and crying, end quote.
No.
Which, this is
I
unimaginable.
didn't know that.
Yeah, this is unimaginable. This is so sad. Now, Prince, I believe, was a little on the young side to really understand what was going on, but he was also in the house. And Muhammad said that while Murray was trying to perform CPR and resuscitate Michael, that he was escorting Prince and Paris out of the room and trying to get them away from the scene. Like, that was his role, was like trying to keep the kids from witnessing this.
Boy.
And he testified that these two kids really saw these frantic final moments of their father's life, and it was awful.
Oof.
So that's really so just incredibly sad.
I had no idea that she was there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Talk about trauma. My gosh. Now, after Jackson was pronounced dead, according to reports, Muhammad testified that once he was pronounced dead, he had made the decision not to let Dr. Murray back in the room, because he didn't know exactly what happened, but he knew that he had been getting medications to try and sleep, and all of a sudden his heart stopped. So to him, he was like, I'm real quick going to put this puzzle together and not let this guy back in the room. I don't know what happened, but
We're
no
just
one's
gonna
going in
start
that
there.
room. Fuck
Right.
that guy. So that kind of underscored that tension between Murray and Jackson's like inner circle that sort of erupted immediately after in the aftermath, which is totally appropriate. He described that the scene was absolutely devastating. The children were completely inconsolable and extreme emotional distress, and that it was one of the worst things that he ever had to encounter, which is so incredibly sad.
Yeah.
Now, the jury ended up deliberating for less than 9 hours over less than 2 full days, and they reached a unanimous verdict. Now, during the 6-week trial, the jury heard 49 witnesses total, and Murray chose not to testify in his own defense. And the verdict read, quote, we, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Conrad Robert Murray guilty of the crime of involuntary manslaughter in violation of Penal Code Section 192, subsection B, alleged victim Michael Joseph Jackson, alleged date June 25th, 2009, as charged in count 1.
Mm.
So now for the sentencing on November 29th of 2011, the LA County Superior Court Judge Michael Pastor sentenced Murray to statutory maximum of 4 years in the county jail. And during sentencing, Judge Pastor sharply criticized Murray, calling his conduct, quote, money for medicine madness, end quote, and expressing shock at Murray's lack of remorse, especially after television comments suggesting Jackson had, quote, entrapped him, quote.
I was entrapped.
You were entrapped. The man is dead. The man is dead. How far do you think this plan was supposed to
That
take
did
him?
not
I don't.
happen.
That I don't. What the dude?
Hello?
You sit down. You take many seats. You sit your ass down. Sit your ass down.
Sit down and shut up.
Shut your face.
You shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
I love that movie.
Love that one.
Now, due to a new California law aimed at reducing jail overcrowding, Murray was to serve his sentence in LA County Jail, not state prison, and the maximum actual time you could spend incarcerated was 2 years. That's it. 2 years. And he was released from the LA County Jail at 12:01 a.m. on October 28th, 2013. He's sentenced to statutory maximum of 4 years, but
I think that's ridiculous,
It
by the
is,
way.
but he only served 2 because of the laws reducing jail overcrowding. He only served 2. He only served just under 2 years.
Not
So
okay.
he was released October 28th, 2013, after serving actually just under 2 years. In response to his conviction, his medical licenses from Nevada, Texas, California, Arizona, all of those that moved from suspension to being revoked completely. So he could never practice medicine in those states again. Now,
I don't think this was justified.
oh no. Yeah.
I think it should have been much worse.
Yeah. Oh, I think so too.
I
Yeah.
mean, come on.
Yeah.
You, as a medical
2 years.
professional, like, drug dealers are getting more time. Like, I mean,
Exactly.
drug dealers are getting more time. And
Hmm.
you prescribed a medication that you knew better
Yeah. We
and
know
did
you
it
knew better.
anyway, and it was lethal.
You're
So,
literally a cardiologist. You know that we need oxygen to survive. You know this. I know you know this.
yeah, drug dealers are getting
Outrageous.
more time than this.
Yes. So,
And then jail overcrowding. So, oh, I'm sorry. So we let a murderer off the
yeah,
streets?
let's
What?
just
Like,
let everybody go then. Okay. Like, let's just not incarcerate anyone. I don't know. I don't get it. Now, as of 2026, he has mostly remained out of the news, and his medical licenses, again, had effectively ended by the conviction and the board actions. In June 2023, he opened his own organization called the DCM Medical Institute, or Conrad Murray Medical, in other words, which is presented as a medical institute rather than a typical clinical practice. And the DCX Medical Institute is described as reporting as something Murray established after 12 years following his conviction, but details about his current clinical operations and whether he is actively practicing medicine are very limited to public sources. So nobody really knows what the hell is going on, I guess, is the end of the story.
my word.
Now, Hollywood concierge doctors are inundated with calls for everything from routine checkups to urgent questions about infections, mental health, sleep problems. Celebrities often want to get immediate answers and don't want to wait, and they want a doctor who will travel to their homes, work on set, or come to their estates. And this kind of started, this whole scenario kind of started a whole bigger conversation around when does it stop becoming appropriate to treat certain medical conditions in the home? You know what I mean? And when is this, just single physician with maybe an assistant, but maybe not enough to manage, some medical issues that can get pretty complex. And the environment, this whole environment, that whole philosophy creates a lot of pressure to satisfy a very high paying, high profile patient or client who can just afford to very easily switch doctors and go to somebody else. And if you're not going to give me what I want, I'm going to go get it elsewhere. So I might as well just do it
Right.
and find someone who is willing to prescribe or administer the medications that they want.
And not
That
refer my rich, fancy friends to you.
Exactly. And, maybe somebody who is a more cautious primary care doctor might avoid doing that, especially for sleep or performance anxiety or pain management, things like that. And home-based care, that can blur the line between appropriate medical treatment and convenience-driven medicine. And in this context, Jackson's arrangement with Conrad Murray, where Murray was paid $150,000 a month to be available around the clock, was an extreme version of concierge medicine and a retainer-based, home-based, highly personalized medical service for a single celebrity. The concierge model in and of itself just creates a lot of pressure to prioritize patient satisfaction over medical judgment. And that's the root of the issue. Like where my desire to make this person happy so that I get more referrals and I stay in their good graces overrides that I really shouldn't be doing this. And my gut feeling is that this is a bad idea sort of situation. And
That's a bad idea in itself of, choosing
yeah,
that path. That's not okay.
exactly. And in extreme cases, it can lead to inappropriate use of very powerful medications like sedatives, opioids, and general anesthetics like propofol. And concierge medicine often operates sort of outside the rigorous oversight of hospitals and clinics with no hospital protocols, limited peer review, less documentation, and therefore less accountability. So people feel like they can kind of just do what they want prescribe what they want and not really have any of that clapback because they don't report to the same entities as people in more traditional settings. Now, a study found that patients who switched to concierge medicine had health spending over 25% higher than a comparison group, and some saw spending rise up to 50%, yet mortality rates did not improve. So basically, it's more costly for basically the same outcome. And this is like regular concierge medicine that's available to regular people. This is not even talking about like
Fancy shit.
the fancy shit for the celebrities, right? And the other piece that makes it so attractive to high profile clientele is like the confidentiality that it provides. They don't even have to leave their house. Somebody can come see them
Right.
at their house and discuss sensitive issues without fear of judgment. And the problem is with privacy comes fewer checks, less scrutiny, and maybe riskier treatments, unfortunately. And this has been amplified in Hollywood specifically by the desire to keep things private and the desire to, get things under control without even having to leave my house.
Well, the ease of access too,
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Now, we mentioned in part one, Matthew Perry similarly died from the acute effects of ketamine. And with levels roughly at the concentration used for general anesthesia in an OR. So there was a lot of comparable themes in Matthew Perry's case. And in both cases, the drug levels in the body were surgical anesthetic levels. So nothing that would be in the realm of typical therapeutic or recreational doses for ketamine at all. And the deaths occurred in private homes, not hospitals, in their private homes where they received very high risk medications that should really
Right.
have more close monitoring.
Right.
And I'm not dogging concierge medicine in and of itself. There's a lot of patients that benefit from it, but when it morphs into private, retainer-based, high-stakes relationship and like Hollywood and lots of private money involved and private equity involved with very wealthy people that are really high level, that's when things can get dicey. And that's when people start ignoring their own clinical judgment and make these really bad calls to gain more favor from people. And that's where it gets really tricky and dicey. So Jackson's death is a very stark warning of what can happen when that model is kind of like taken to the extreme. It's a really sad situation. His poor children had to witness all that, which is devastating. So devastating.
Uh-huh.
And that's where we're at. That's what we got.
I don't know. I just think it's like I have a lot to say and I don't know how to say it.
I know it.
Just it's part of one of those things where money and power lead to more dangerous decisions.
That's exactly
And
what it
that's
is.
with everything, not just medical.
Yeah,
It's
everything in general. You're right.
It's just it's that lifestyle,
It's
of
exactly.
what having wealth can give you,
Yep, exactly.
and it's definitely dangerous.
Nothing is out of reach when you have enough money. No thing that you want is unattainable when you
Right.
have that much money and power.
Yep. Right.
And that's when things get scary with healthcare specifically, because, a layperson might want to take 6 milligrams of Ativan, recreationally, but we all know that that's a terrible fucking idea. Okay. That's not a good idea.
No, you really shouldn't do that.
So a lot of interesting themes in this case. And this was a really sad one to cover. It really was very sad. Yeah.
Well, thanks for choosing it. And gosh, it's so interesting because I really haven't thought about Michael Jackson. I mean, not to say that I wasn't a fan. It's just not my type of music, but I knew of it and,
Yeah.
just whatever. And, how could you not know who the guy was?
Yes.
So it's really interesting. And I swear, like I said, I've been bombarded lately. It's like, where did
Mm-hmm.
this come from?
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
crazy.
crazy. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah.
You can check us out on Facebook at Medcrimes Podcast.
You can find us on YouTube at Medcrimes Podcast.
You can search for us on Instagram at guess what? Medcrimes Podcast.
If you wish to become a Patreon, you can find us at www.patreon.com/medcrimespodcast.
You can send us any crazy stories, ideas, suggestions at medcrimes@gmail.com.
Stay safe out there and just, make sure you put your little medicine hat on before you try to just make people happy to appease them. Make sure it's safe.
Don't take propofol.
Don't, unless you're in an operating room
I
or something.
mean,
Yeah, that would
that's
be okay.
fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
We're okay with that.
Yeah, we're okay with that. But like not in your bed, I
No,
wouldn't.
not
I
a
would
good
not.
idea.
Would not do any of that at all. So yeah.